Hello, Jeremy Chambers, Independence Acres Homestead here. Well, if you've got your breeding done with your rabbits, got your nesting boxes made, it's been approximately 32 days, you should have some bunnies on the way. This video is going to help you prepare for those bunnies and also give you some ideas about what to do and what not to do with their care. So if you've done everything right and you had successful breeding, you should begin to see signs of your mom rabbit ready to give birth or kindle as the days progress. Usually about 5 days before that 32 days, so about 25 to 28 days, or as soon as up to a couple hours before giving birth, the rabbit will begin trying to make a nest, and you'll see what's called hay stashing, which is where the rabbit begins to collect hay or straw or whatever nesting material that you may have given her. She starts collecting it in her mouth and she's carrying it into the nesting box that you have made by using our video linked here. She's going to begin lining that nest box with hay or straw, and then after she has a nice nesting material nest build, she'll begin to pull fur and fill that nest with some of her own fur. She's going to pull that from her dewlap, which is the area around her neck there. Could also be pulling it off of her front legs, her belly, her sides, pretty much anywhere she can get her mouth on. She'll begin pulling that hair off of her body to line the nest. Now, usually in cooler climates, she's going to be pulling a little more hair, and if it's summer, a little warm in the summer, she might pull a little less hair. The hair is for comfort, but it's also to maintain the temperature of the nest properly for the baby bunnies. Now, once you begin to see signs that the baby bunnies have been born, there might be a little blood, some afterbirth placentas falling, in the nest area or sometimes in the cage area. Once you see those babies are born, I encourage you, go ahead, stick your hand in there, feel around in the nest, and count the babies. You want to make sure that number one, that you don't have any with any injuries. Number two, you want to count them so that you can always keep track of how many there are in the nest. And also just a general health check. Make sure the mom has cleaned them properly. Make sure there aren't any dead kits in there, because if there are, you want to pull those out and dispose of them, because you don't want them attracting maggots and flies and other bugs and pests into your nesting area, right? And there's an old wives' tale about don't touch the babies because that'll put your smell on them, and then the mom will abandon them. And that's just flat out not true. If you raise domestic rabbits and you handle those mama rabbits on a regular basis and you feed them and you water them, they're 100% familiar with your scent, and just putting your scent on the baby bunnies is not going to scare her off, because she knows your scent, she trusts you, she depends on you for her livelihood. So, go ahead, touch them, feel them, play with them, hold them. You don't want to do things to induce stress, but you do want to make sure that you're familiar with all the bunnies in the nesting box there. Now, as the rabbits begin to age, you'll start to see some hair growing on them at about 5 to 8 days, and then anywhere from 12 to 14 days, you'll begin to see their eyes open. They'll become more active. One of the fun things to do is, it's fun for us, probably not for them. When they're all laying down in the nest, you just kind of stick your hand and rub it over them, and you'll see them kind of hop around in there. We call that popcorning. And that's just them trying to find the mom so that they can nurse. And that brings us to the next subject here, nursing. You're not going to see... Hey guys, knock it off. Chicks are acting a little crazy over here. So you're not going to actually see the mom nurse or be, sitting in the nest taking care of the babies the way that, a lot of other mammals are, as far as being so attentive to their babies. They're only going to be in that nest usually twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. just to clean them, make sure that the mom will clean their genital area in order to stimulate them to urinate and to poop, and she'll be in there to nurse them once or twice a day, and that is it. So if you don't see your mom in there, the mom rabbit in there paying attention to the babies all day long, don't worry. All you're going to want to do is pull the babies out once or twice once a day, probably right in the morning or just before you close things up at night, and just check their bellies. And you want to look for nice, full, round, kind of little whitish bellies. If you begin to see those bellies not being as white, the mom rabbit might be having some issues with her milk coming in, so you might want to give her some treats to help promote that milk production, such as black oil sunflower seeds. Now, as the rabbits get a little older, like I said, they're going to begin with their eyes open at about 14 days at 2 weeks. And they're at that point, once their eyes are open, they're going to start getting a little more exploratory. They're going to begin hopping out of the nest, looking around, seeing what's going on in the world. And you might begin to find them outside the nest box. Don't worry about that. Just pick them up, set them back in. More than likely, they're going to hop out again. And sometimes even the younger ones, you might find them outside of the nesting box in the morning or in the evening whenever you're going to go check on them. You want to make sure that you get those guys back in the nesting box as soon as possible if they don't have their eyes open yet. Because more likely they're not out there on purpose. What has happened is they've latched on a little too hard during a nursing session, and when mom hopped out of the nest, they stayed latched on, and you want to get them back into the warmth as quickly as possible. Now at 2 weeks, once they start opening their eyes and coming out of the nest box, you're going to begin to see them in the feed of the mom, whether they are getting into the J feeders or if you use Crocs. They're going to begin trying to eat the same as the mom does. So you'll see them trying to get into the water. So you're going to want to use a shallow bowl for the water. Feed boxes, you want to make sure that it's something they can get in and out of, so they're not getting stuck into any of the food bowls or J feeders. Chicks are going a little crazy because our new farm cat is watching them play, and they don't seem to like him watching. Anyway, so like I said, about 2 weeks they'll start exploring on their own. Now, as they begin to age, you'll spend less and less time in the nest box, and if that happens, it's fine. Usually by about 3 or 4 weeks is when we go ahead and pull the nest box out. It's going to give them all a little bit more room to spread out into the hutch and the cage there. It's not something where it's a huge stress for us or for them. So, you want to give them, plenty of opportunity to get out. And then weaning is going to begin anywhere from around 5 to 6 weeks. The weaning process isn't that extensive for rabbits. The mom's going to do most of it herself. All she's going to do is, nurse them, cut down to maybe 1 nursing a day, or every other day, unless you've got just an absolutely extraordinary mom who has, able to nurse as long as you leave the babies in there. And then we usually move them out of the mom's cage and hutch at about 8 weeks. At this point, they are beginning to look like full-size rabbits in their proportions, so their ears are better proportioned to their body, unlike with the babies where their ears are just a little bit more stunted and they've got the larger bellies and the smaller heads. At about 8 weeks, they start to look like just little rabbits instead of actually baby bunnies. So at about 8 weeks, we'll move the rabbits from the bunny barn with mom in mom's cages out to what we call our grow-out pens. Now these are some hutches that we have built that are 3 feet deep and 5 feet wide. So we've got about 15 square feet of space here. And this is where we will put a full litter of rabbits at a time at 8 weeks of age. And they'll get plenty of food and water to keep them growing until they reach that ideal weight of about 5 pounds live weight before processing day. And That usually happens at about 12 to 14 weeks with the Californians that we're growing. You might experience some faster growth rates or some slower growth rates, but ideally 5 pounds live weight is a good goal. Yes. So stay tuned for our next in our series on cuniculture, and we will show you how we process our rabbits here on our homestead. Thank you very much for joining us, and until next time, God bless.